Can your smartphone also be an actual handheld gaming console? Today we're going to be talking about what the Backbone One actually is, what it does, and if it's right for you. But is it really worth the money, or is it just a gimmick? The Backbone One is a controller attachment for the iPhone that works with any controller-compatible mobile game. This also includes support for PlayStation Remote Play, Xbox Remote Play, and Steam Link. So theoretically, you can play PS5, Xbox, and PC games from your phone. You could already do all that stuff, but the selling point on this is that you'll have a controller plugged into your phone so that it actually works, rather than using those sloppy touchpad controls that nobody likes. The Backbone One works with any iPhone that supports iOS 15 and up. It even comes with an adapter that makes it compatible with iPhones that have those huge cameras like the 14 Pro Max Ultimate. So if you're worried about this device lasting between iPhones, theoretically it should. So let's talk about what it's like to use the Backbone One. This includes attaching it to your phone and also using it as a controller. The process of attaching the Backbone One to your phone is pretty simple. It extends to the size of your phone. It goes pretty wide. I don't think there's an iPhone that's that big. It just plugs into the bottom port, the charging port of your iPhone, and then it adjusts down to the size of your phone. Really simple. While it does adjust to your phone size, it does not work with an iPhone case on the phone. For some people, that might already be enough to say, I don't need that in my life. I'm never gonna use it if I have to take my phone out of the case. I think that's sort of a point against the Backbone One in a big way, having to fumble with your phone on the subway, take it out of the case, try not to drop it, and then put it in this controller just so you can play, I don't know, Shovel Knight Dig, for example, for like 10 minutes. Might not be worth the time. If you go on Backbone's website, they explain that they can't design it to work with cases because then they can't guarantee that your phone won't fall out of the Backbone One and onto the floor. Completely understand that. There's really specific grips that are measured to the exact size of the current iPhone models. I just think it's a really weird use case to then consider, when am I gonna actually use the Backbone One if I can't use it on quick commutes? The only other option I can imagine is you set up the Backbone One before you get on the train, and then you pull it out of your bag to use it as if it's a regular handheld. But on the other hand, you might have a really simple iPhone case that doesn't click into your phone really firmly, and you can just take it off and put the Backbone One in and play. Either way, if you're thinking about this thing on a commute, just keep that in mind. I think it's a really big note that you should not glaze over. However, if you're thinking about buying this for longer trips, like if you fly often or take longer bus rides or train rides, this is perfect. You'll have a chance to sit down in your seat, take your phone out of your case calmly and not amidst the train traffic. That to me is probably the most ideal use case, on top of thinking about it as an at-home device to play games on, but let's talk about that in a minute. Anyway, now that you know what it's like to actually use the Backbone One, let's talk about its implications on battery life. The device itself wires into the iPhone as a hardwire, so it's not wireless, it's not using a wireless connection to talk to your phone. It's connected in and going through the phone's charging port to send the inputs. So it's not going to drain your battery much at all. However, if you're playing games on your phone, that will drain your battery a little more. It's kind of a catch-22. Using the Backbone One doesn't drain battery on your phone, but using the Backbone One will imply that you will be using more battery life because you're playing games on it. But if you're already somebody who plays games on your phone, like maybe Grindstone, a game that works in phone mode, then you're used to that portion of this. So that's the only thing I wanted to make sure you kept in mind, is that you will be using phone energy on games. It's not the backbone that would be killing your battery. With all that out of the way, you can actually charge your phone through the Backbone One. So if you're near a charging port at the airport, or if you're just next to an outlet and you want to keep playing, you just plug into the bottom of the Backbone One and you're all good. One really quick note about this port, it also makes the Backbone One usable as a controller on a PC or a Mac. So you can use this as a gaming controller for your home setup. And just to talk about the Backbone One as a controller, it feels great in the hand. And since the iPhone isn't all that heavy, the Backbone One itself is very light, and therefore the entire experience of holding it up is pretty decent. The buttons themselves are quite clicky. The layout itself, however, is more akin to what you find on the Xbox controllers, so just keep that in mind too. I didn't have a lot of trouble getting used to that, but that's just one thing I wanted to point out. When it comes to displays on a handheld device, that's one of the most important things you can shop for, and you really can't do much better than most iPhone displays. And that's just another point in favor of using a Backbone One to play games on it. But any gaming device is always judged mostly by the games you can play on it. So what games are worth playing on the iPhone on controller? Before we talk about specific games, let's talk about the Backbone 1 PlayStation Edition because this is actually marketed as the official Sony endorsed way to play remote play on your phone. And so far, using the Backbone 1 on my iPhone has made a pretty solid configuration for remote play for me. And while the controls are comfortable, it might not be as comfortable as your PlayStation controller at home, so I wouldn't jump into competitive player versus player games unless you want to play something simple like player versus environment stuff. That's more like what this is for, something a little more casual. So while using this as a controller is decent, let's talk a little bit about using remote play as a service. Remote play is kind of tricky. It's designed for you to play PlayStation when you're not home by connecting to your own device at home. So depending on where you're at in the world, you can fire up your PlayStation from your phone and play. Sounds really cool, but the biggest catch is that your internet connection at home needs to be solid, and the internet connection at where you're at needs to be solid as well. And I don't know your experience with hotel Wi-Fi, but I've rarely had any good times trying to connect to anything from hotel Wi-Fi, let alone my PlayStation at home. But if you're in a scenario where the internet's great, then go ahead and try it out and see if your lag is good or bad. You'll find out really quickly whether or not it's going to be viable. That being said, I did find it fun to use the Backbone 1 at home when I was sitting on the couch trying to just be a little more social rather than staying in this room to play PlayStation. At that point, it's almost like having a PlayStation 5 Switch where you can pick it up and bring it with you and have it around the house. Okay, so that was a lot about remote play, but let's talk about some of the games I've been enjoying on the Backbone 1 straight off of Apple Arcade. Apple Arcade actually has a section that is dedicated to games that are great on controller, which is a great place to go, especially if you have an Apple Arcade account, to find some games to play. I mentioned it earlier, but I actually made it really far in Shovel Knight Dig on my iPhone of all places. I was pretty surprised to see that it was on Apple Arcade as one of the included games, so I downloaded it and I tried it with the Backbone 1, and it felt completely natural. The only quirk there is that a lot of the games are likely gonna have A, B, X, Y as the controller labels in their menus, so it's different. It's not gonna be the same unless they took the extra step, but I don't know if the developers can actually detect if the PlayStation Edition is connected, but that's just worth keeping in mind. So overall, it's pretty easy to recommend the Backbone 1 to anybody who's looking for a way to play games on their iPhone or Android device. As I was editing this video, the Android device version of the Backbone 1 was made available for purchase. So if you've been wondering when the Android version of this is going to be available, well, that's right now. So on top of the fact that the Backbone 1 is a really good way to turn your phone into a mobile gaming device, I think it's also a great selling point that you can use this on your PC or Mac. The $100 price tag becomes a lot easier to digest when you know that. You just have to make sure you're getting it for the right reasons. If you're only going to use it for remote play, I would be a little careful of that, especially if you're not always going to be using remote play. It seems like a steep price tag to pay. So if you're going to buy the Backbone 1 for Android or iPhone, make sure you're using it for more than cloud gaming, because honestly, that's not the best thing this can do. So let me know in the comments if this helped you decide whether or not you're gonna buy the Backbone 1. Let me know which version you're gonna get. You're gonna get the Android version or the iPhone version. Make sure you like the video if you liked it. Make sure you subscribe to my channel if you really like this video. Other than that, thank you very much for watching. And you might notice that this looks a little different between cuts. That's because I was editing this and realized that I lost the last 3 minutes of the video that I recorded for you. And so while I'm editing it, I'm also re-recording it. Such is what happens when you don't make sure your microphone is on while you're recording. So anyway, have a great day and I will see you in the next video.